Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome to John's Briefs. Here, welcome to John's Briefs. Here, once again on John's Briefs with Carrie Dudenhofer from Carrie Conceal, the co-director of the ASP Instructor Certification. Joe, just so that everybody knows, Tim Forshee from Forshee Law, he's just on vacation. And so he hasn't gone anywhere. He's just taking a break. He and his wife are out on vacation. And so I ran out of videos. Here we are. And talking to Carrie about expert witness stuff in terms of the legal and moral self-defense, the 800-pound gorilla in the room. How much does an expert witness cost?
To win the fight after the fight, you need help. After a use of force, I trust Firearms Legal Protection to help me win the fight for the rest of my life. From their 24/7 attorney-answered hotline to coverage for the use of all legal tools, Firearms Legal Protection has you covered. Get a discount by signing up at the link below.
Oh boy, nobody wants to talk about this, Carrie.
Oh, how much does it cost? Are we really going to talk about this?
Well, listen, here's the thing now. Okay, so why? Okay, first I want to back up and say,
I don't
why doesn't
mind.
anybody want to talk about this?
Okay, I can tell you why. For me, it's uncomfortable because I just can't believe that anybody other than a surgeon or something that could save somebody's life is worth that much money an hour. That's what blows my mind. But then I also realize that although I bill a certain number of hours, I actually spend about 4 to 5 times that because nobody would actually want to pay me for the total of number of hours I spend on a case. And I know part of that is just because, I haven't been doing it for a decade or 2 decades yet. I know people that do this work that are able to get a case and inside of 2 hours, as long as it's not a massive amount of discovery, but they're able to have a really, cohesive opinion and share that well. I think I'm still cutting my teeth.
Oh,
So
come
why
on,
don't people want
really?
to talk about it?
Come
Why don't you think
on,
people want to
really?
talk about it? You think it's because it is so much money?
Well, I mean, I think you're right. I think nobody wants to talk about the money because it's a sensitive topic, right? Because when you start thinking about, well, wait a minute, what do these things cost? I did this the other day. Somebody who was all kinds of frustrated and was like, well, it's either you let the bad guy kill you or you end up with the lawyers killing you later and taking your life. And of course, when they're like, hey, the attorney is going to steal your livelihood. And I was like, well, time out. First of all, that attorney went through 7 years of post-secondary education, right? So they went through their undergraduate program and then law school. Law school probably wrung them out like nobody's business.
Yeah.
So it cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars probably to get that law school degree. Then they had to study for and pass the bar. Then they had to get an expertise probably in criminal law or in civil law, depending on where they are. And their continuing education. Then they got to fund an office. So they got to have a place to practice. They got to hire their staff so that not only do they have somebody to answer the phone, but somebody to help them gather materials and handle discovery and all those things. They got to have insurance. They got to do, and that insurance includes errors and omissions. They got to have all these professional organizations that they got to be part of. And it all amounts to literally tens of thousands of dollars a month that flies out the door. And you're like, and you want them to work for how much? Because I got to cover that $20,000 a month, maybe, that goes out the door before I feed myself at all.
Yeah,
and you're like,
so true.
I only have so many hours in a week to bill, and so I got to make those at the price that I can pay those bills. And so, when I talk about this as an expert witness, and I'd love your thoughts on this, Carrie, that the idea says, okay, wait a minute, you're not paying for my time, you're paying for my expertise. And I know expert witnesses that work relatively cheap, just like I know firearms instructors that work relatively cheap. That I've said, hey, listen, like, okay, so as a firearms instructor right now, my private lesson rate as a firearms instructor right now is $250 an hour. And I don't make any bones about that. And I've had people occasionally come back and go, John, I know a guy here in town that'll do it for $50 an hour. And I go, great. I used to charge $50 an hour. And man, he might or she, they might be a good resource for you. And they might give you what you need at your level. And so you might want to do that, but you're paying for my expertise and my ability to help you. And that's at a level that a $50 an hour person can't. And if you want that expertise, it costs something because I got to take time away from my regular work that I'm doing to come and focus only on you. And that's not fair to say, well, you should do that cheap. That's slapping the face of my wife and my children.
Yes.
That's saying, hey, listen, I have at Active Self Protection, I have 16 employees to pay. And I'm taking time away from my work that I do to pay those 16 employees to come and help you.
Yeah.
And now you expect me to do that for $50 an hour? I can't pay them on that.
Oh, I totally understand what you're saying. Yeah, the other part about it that's hard, I think, is how do you set your price to begin with? That was hard for me to try to figure out, and I didn't want to price myself, because when I was taking my very first solo case, I didn't want to ask for a ton because I wasn't quite sure I would be able to deliver, what was needed or how it was needed, and I just didn't know if I'd be good at it or not. But I had some very wise people that helped me set my fees to begin with. But this is the absolute truth. Every case that I have, so far, every case that I've taken and every case that I've consulted on where they have requested my fee schedule, CV, and resume before we did a free consultation on the phone on the cases I haven't accepted. So for all of those cases, everyone has said, you need to raise your prices. Do you hear that also?
Oh yeah, I hear that all the time. In fact, every attorney I talk to is like, so I get two responses. One, I get, John, you need to raise your rates. Like, I will tell you the last time I showed up, and if you're in the Asp Unlimited app, of course, you've seen the case that I put in there, right? The one that I testified in out of Detroit. If not, you should be in the Asp Unlimited app. That case is really fun. I showed up to court, and no kidding. So the prosecutor, I was working for the defense. The prosecutor, yeah, I'm not going to say mean things. And I'm going to be professional. He was not. He's like, whatever. Who's this guy? He had the police. He had a police detective who was kind of the liaison and the guy who was in charge of the court. He wasn't the bailiff, but he was in charge of making sure everything was in the right place and everybody was in the right spot. And I came in, and he was like, he literally looked at the prosecutor and he's like, holy crap, how did they get him? And he was like, and I heard him say it, and he was like, who? And he was like, dude, that's John Correa from ASP. He's like literally internationally famous for this stuff. And he literally went over to the other attorney and was like, how did you hire him? And the funny part is the attorney was kind of like, who? And it was the paralegal who had actually kind of first started with me that was like, that's right. And it was a fluke, by the way, it was a friend of a friend that connected us together. And so at the end of that case, once we were done, the attorney was like, John, you need to raise your rates. There's really nobody like you around. And so, or on the other side, I get the attorney that goes, John, I'm not billing that per hour.
Oh, interesting.
And I say,
thought of that.
And my answer to that normally is, counselor, you need to raise your rates. If, number one, and number two, right, but you're taking the entirety of the case. So you're going to have a number of billable hours that is this. I'm going to have a number of billable hours that's this, because I am working a very niche thing for you. And I'm also focusing hyper intently for you. And so because of that, again, you're paying me for my expertise in an area. And quite frankly, if it costs your client X number of dollars to get a not guilty verdict on this charge or to get charges dismissed, it's probably money well spent.
So true. And also, I think having rates that are that give you room to wiggle down makes it possible for, if you get a call from a dad of 4 kids who are all minors, who was involved in a situation, and it looks pretty clear that the prosecution just needs to learn a little bit about justified use of force, and that it'll probably end up going away because it's that clear. You can wiggle down if you want to, and not decimate the guy's life as they're, he's not quite at the public defender's office level, but just above that. So having the wiggle room, I think, is nice to have that. Also, it is kind of weird too. It was hard for me to realize, I don't know why I started thinking about this in the courtroom one day, but to realize that the detective that was sitting beside the prosecutor, what his hourly wage was compared to what my billing hour wage was, I was kind of like, oh my goodness gracious. Then I'd feel a little bit bad about it, because that detective was the expert for the prosecution.
Yeah, that's true. But you know what? He chose his job.
True, that's true. And they do lots of stuff. Not all of them, but a lot of officers that I know do have things on the side they do, whether it's private investigations or security and that kind of stuff too, if they want to bolster that. So
Well, and
yeah,
let me say, I mean, those officers that are that, the head officer for them, the expert witness on their side, sometimes, hey, that's part of their job. They're getting paid by their department, and that's part of their job responsibilities. Cool, man. That's their agreement. And I have nothing but respect for those folks that are doing that. In the last case that I did, again, it's the one in the app. The expert witness on the other side was an agent of the ATF. And so guess what? That's part of his job. He got called as an expert for the state. That's part of his job. I didn't bear him any ill will. I didn't call him no names in front of the jury. I said I disagreed with his analysis, and I said so in a very professional way, I think. And here's why, and all those things. You should go check it out. It's a pretty cool case. But the other side of that is I'm a freelancer. I don't have a paycheck. I don't have a steady income.
right.
And so therefore, we got to do that stuff. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the other part. Carrie, are you willing to share what your hourlies are?
Sure. I don't have a problem putting it out there. I still can't believe it some of the time. But so yeah, so my fee schedule right now says $350 an hour. And I do a 1 hour free consultation on the phone. If somebody just wants to spitball something and find out if it has anywhere to go. I've found that any case I've had, they've been absolutely more than fair. They haven't had to haven't asked me to lower my wages or anything like that. They've understood why. I also give them a billing summary, usually about halfway through when we're halfway to trial, so they can see the number of hours I'm spending on the case. And although they're paying me for this many hours, contractually, I've actually spent this many hours. So they know that, I'm taking good care of them and I'm not taking advantage of them in any way, shape, or form. I think it's interesting too. One of the things I never thought of is, sometimes you get a call from the paralegal or the private investigator or whatever for the office. And sometimes it's the attorney that calls. And usually for some of the private cases I've done, when it's the paralegal that calls, the attorney then wants to meet or wants to talk to you sometimes before they'll, want to move forward. And it feels a little bit like it's not a job interview at all. It's kind of the opposite of that, but it's more of a, is the person likable, and how will are they articulate? Can they explain things to a jury?
I mean, absolutely.
They care about that.
They want to know, are you going to be a good person to put in front of a jury? Because dude, there are plenty of people who are very smart folks that I'm like, that's like the person who's an expert in their subject and is a terrible college professor, because they don't know how to relate to people.
Yeah.
And so, 100%. So do you have, it's just your hourly rate, or do you have a day rate when you're going to be in court?
Yes. I haven't looked at that in a long time though. I'd have to pull that up, but I do have a day rate. And it's based off my hourly rate with a little bit of a discount. And I do bill by, if it's within my travel, a day, not a day's drive. If it's within a reasonable commute, like an hour to an hour and a half away, I don't charge them for travel time. And I do half day billing on if I'm away from home doing something for the case. So that way it makes it a little more affordable for them, especially for court. And then sometimes you have the option of sitting through the entire trial. And I never bill for that because I only bill for the time that I'm on the stand or that they need me there. But man, it's educational to be able to, sit through the entire trial and understand what's going on and hear all of the testimony, because sometimes it's different than what's in discovery.
Yeah, well, and obviously, if you're doing that for your own edification and you want to follow the case, you're not going to bill them for those kind of things. Although I've had an instance, I had a case where I was asked, hey, John, we need you to appear at this hearing, and I'm going to call you to the stand in this hearing. Okay, man, I do half-day billing rates for that. It was remotely. And then I literally sat there for 4 hours and listened. And then the judge was like, hey, I'm ready to rule on this issue on this hearing. And the defense attorney was like, Your Honor, I was going to call an expert. And the judge was like, I don't need to hear from him. I'm ready to rule. And I think you're going to like the ruling. So shut up and let's not waste any more time. And then gave the attorney what he wanted. And guess what? I had to bill. I was like, look, I had to sit here for a half day in court. And so, I took a half day away. So, I'm going to bill you for a half day. I'm willing to share. My current full billing rate is $450 an hour for work that I'm doing in my own environment. And if I have depositions or court appearances in the Phoenix, Arizona metro area, then I charge by the half day billing rate for that. If I have to leave my metro area, it's full day billing rates. My full day billing rate is $4,000 a day plus reasonable expenses, and that includes travel days.
Yep.
And so,
Yeah.
If I have to get on an airplane, you're going to pay for the reasonable expense. I generally don't fly first class when I'm doing that, or
Right.
I will charge you the coach rate if I want to upgrade myself or whatever, ball hard or whatever. And then, I'm not going to get the Taj Mahal hotel or whatever, the Ritz Carlton. Right. I'm going to get a reasonable hotel room, and a reasonable rental car and those things. So, but that means if I'm going to testify in court, you're going to have 3 days of billing rate, of full billing rate, because I'm going to take at least 3 days away from my life in order to do that. Usually a lot more. The reason that you charge that too is I can't just book 3 days. I usually have to book an entire week out, because there's going to be some flexibility in when I end up testifying and those things. So that's my full rate. And like you said, that does allow if something comes along, hey, I do the same thing you do, Carrie. I will tell you, like, for instance, I think at the end of the day, what did I bill? I think I did an expert witness report, double report for a case that I was working on. And I think for the report, you were involved. You helped me with this report. I think I billed like 35 hours total for those 2 reports. And I think over the course of the 5 days that I had them, I think I worked like 65 hours in those 5 days. I mean, I did nothing but just dig into that all day long.
Right.
And look at discovery and watch evidence and watch depositions and watch, and read and then, put stuff around and consult. And it was just 5 full. So I did 60 hours of work and billed 35. What kind of retainer do you get when you start?
So if it's a felony case, I asked for a 10-hour retainer. I gave him 12 hours worth of work for the 10-hour price. And then we go from there. I can usually easily get what I need to get done within that time frame, at least an initial report, share my initial assumptions or opinions and that sort of thing. And then if we need to do more, then we can go from there. I do a couple things I thought of too. For people that want to get started doing this, I think one way to start would be, like you said, become an expert, like we talked about in the last video. That's key first. And then find someone that is also doing this in the field that you want to do it in, and ask if you can mentor under them. Another way that can help too is to get the trial transcripts from other expert witnesses in this field, or you can watch some of the cases, like the Florida case. I don't like to say the name, but the Florida case where the expert witness on that one, you can watch the full defensive use of force expert witness testimony. It's several hours long, but that's on YouTube. Same thing with some of the cases out of, I guess, Minnesota or Wisconsin. And so watching those use of force expert witnesses, that you learn a lot that way too. But even some of the older ones, I have some from the 80s and 90s that that Masada Yub did. And so it's wonderful to be able to read through those transcripts and understand what questions are asked and how are they asked, and how can you explain those, that sort of thing. And then also, if you're working with a taxpayer funded office, or if you're working for a law firm that accepts low income clients, you can discount your rate significantly if you work for. So it lists right on my form that I offer a significant discount to taxpayer funded offices and offices that work with the disadvantaged.
Well, and listen, there's nothing saying, so part of this is again, it's not fair to ask your lawyer or an expert witness or your doctor to work on you for free or for low pay, because then the other people have to cover that. But there's nothing saying you can't do pro bono work or you can't do reduced fee work, when you feel like you can. I did an expert witness case pro bono, and because I knew what the situation was of the clients, and quite frankly, they were out of work and had been railroaded, and it was a travesty of justice. And the attorney, who's a good friend of mine actually, and he said, John, I need help on this case, and man, I'm just not sure how much we're going to be able to pay. And I was like, all right, I'm in. Like, I'm your friend, and this is a good thing, so I'll help you. And I was like, look, if I end up having to travel or something, I'm not traveling on my own dime, but right. I'll help. And okay, we get it. And then because of some of the things we were able to do with reports and those kind of things, we ended up getting the charges dismissed. And so that was a really, really good thing. And so you can do that stuff, right? And I hope you guys understand, I'm not trying to play, big shot or any of those things. I'm just telling you what this thing's really cost. I will also say this is one of those reasons that something like firearms legal protection is important when you have some kind of legal protection plan. I know Carrie's in Washington State and they have functionally outlawed that or something, right? Which is stupid. Fix that, you Washingtonians.
It's back now.
It's back now?
It's actually, yep.
We're okay?
Yep.
Yeah, so
thank goodness.
Just FYI, like I'm a consulting expert. I am firearms legal protections consulting expert. So part of my arrangement with them is their program attorneys. If they have a use of force with a firearms legal protection client, I consult with the attorneys on that one as part of my relationship with them. So you don't get charged for that. I'm going to consult with your attorney. I'm going to help them to do that stuff. And then they have an expert witness benefit in there, and their expert witness benefit on their premium plans is $10,000. So and hey, you go, wait a minute, John, gosh, man, $10,000. It sounds like you're going to go through $10,000 in a hurry. Yeah. But I'll say again, if you're an FLP member, am I going to, put the spurs to you? No, I'm not going to put the dang spurs to you. I'm going to make sure that we get the best that we can. And hopefully you're coming to our online seminars. Hopefully you're a fan of active self-protection. Hopefully your cases are clean enough that we don't have the big stink on them that ends up costing us crazy amounts of money to put things together. And we are able to talk to the prosecuting attorney and submit a report to the prosecutor and go, hey, Mr. Prosecutor, this is justified use of force and you should let it go. And oftentimes that's exactly what happens. And the prosecutor goes, no, we totally get it. This is justified use of force. Have a nice day. And then we're done.
Yeah.
So,
would be fun to talk about. Would it be fun to talk about next time is what are some of the stinks that have been on the cases we've had? Because some of them are, it's just mind blowing. Some of the stink that's on them, even people that have had training. So anyway.
Hey, why don't we talk about that next time? Carrie, man, I appreciate this. I know this is a topic nobody wants to talk about. And I know that these are the things that you're like, oh, wait a minute, can we really talk about this? I think we have to talk about it. I think that to me, there's this thing in the Gen X and Boomer and world, and that's me, right? I'm like the center of Gen X. They're like, oh, we don't talk about money. Oh, we don't talk about our salary. Oh, we don't talk about those things. I just think that's not healthy. I just think that that's ridiculous. I have a spiritual commitment that the laborers worth their wages. And so, hey, you pay people what they're worth and you move from there. So, hey, next time we're going to talk about the stinkiest stuff we've seen in cases. Carrie, thanks so much for being on.
Thank you. It's been great.